What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Building Code. I'm Charley Birtwistle, the solo podcast host for at least the time being. This will be the first episode I've recorded without Courtney. So don't hold me too accountable. Cut me a little slack. I'll figure it out, I'm sure. But the good news is, even though I'm recording solo, I have an awesome guest joining me today. Allyson Case Anderson, who is the founder and CEO of Integro Builders out in Chicago, Illinois, talking a little bit about client management, client expectation, communication, dealing with difficult clients, all the fun things that builders have to go through on every single project. She has done a fantastic job learning lessons the hard way, celebrating successes, and figuring out a really, really robust, consistent kind of process that she can run her clients through to ensure that they're going to be happier, she's going to be happier, architects are going to be happier. One big happy family getting projects across the finish line. So without further ado, let's get Allyson in here. Hey, Allyson, welcome to The Building Code. Really appreciate you making the time to join me today. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. I was actually just before you hopped on going through your website. We have like pre-planted questions I'm supposed to ask, but your website is incredible. I have a lot of additional questions to ask as well too. So excited to talk to you. For those people that have not been stalking your website though, we always like to start with just a quick introduction, who you are, where you came from, kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, my name is Allyson Anderson. I am a custom builder. I have focus on residential custom builds and commercial interiors. I have an office in Chicago and in Western Michigan, and I'm a certified passive house builder.
Gotcha. And how did you, I always like to hear these stories. How did you get started in construction?
I started in construction because I hired a terrible contractor.
Okay. You're like, I can do better than this.
Yeah, so I left my cushy corporate job, and I wanted to flip houses like everyone on HGTV. And, I was 28 years old. And so I got a business partner, and he had a guy, a buddy. And that buddy was going to be our contractor. And it was an unmitigated disaster. Schedule, lack of communication, the budget was double or more, like completely out of control. And so I had, I had gotten my GC license because I was like, oh man, I don't need to pay this guy to mess up my project for me. Like I can mess it up all by myself and have more control than I have right now. So I got my GC license, and I thought like on our next development that we would do the subcontracting ourselves. But instead I ended up in litigation with my business partner over his buddy. And so then I was broke, and I had this GC license, and I had a friend who was like, yeah, I don't trust any of these contractors that are bidding my renovation. And we're already over budget. We haven't even gotten to like real bidding.
Yeah.
And so she's like, would you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I mean, as long as you understand, I don't quite know what I'm doing. We can do that. And she did. And so that was my first project. And then I had another friend, and he was like, I'm renovating this 2-flat. He had an architect, and that was a totally different experience. And I was like, oh yeah, this is way better. Like we have a set of drawings, we have a Bible, like the client, like I have this third party that can like bounce ideas off of, but also help buffer with the client. It's like, yeah, the client doesn't have to believe my change order is legit. They have to believe their architect. And then I learned from the architecture community that the relationship between the builder and the architect is often an adversarial one. And that's where I really thought I could make a big difference. So I started doing sole architecturally led work. And we really branded ourselves as being about the project. Projects are hard. Construction projects are hard. I don't care what anybody says. And so, I think the best thing we can do, particularly for the clients, is all stay on the same team.
Yeah.
And present solutions, not problems, as often as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the things I saw on your website that caught my eye immediately. It's a quote from you. We're about facilitation. We're about collaboration. We're about hard truths if necessary. We're about the project, which I thought was really cool. And you referenced that multiple times in there about the collaboration, the communication. It's kind of a team-oriented approach to going about the project.
Yeah, I think initially when I started in this, I thought the builders were the problem. Like I thought everyone was a degenerate. They were just, keeping everything tight to the vest and overcharging and not giving enough information and that, it was all with ill intent, I guess we'll say. But I think as I've been doing this, I'm going into my 13th year now. I would say about 5, 6 years in, I realized that it's not the builders. Like builders want to be good. The reason that builders say little and show less is because they are burned when they show any level of vulnerability on a project, either by the client or by the architects. And then I really started changing perspective of like, the trouble with our industry is not that we have all these bad actors all over the place. The trouble we have in this industry is wrong expectations
Hmm.
from everyone involved. And so I've really had a strong focus on trying to educate clients and architects on how to work with your builders and how to operate with grace so that we can all get through to the finish line, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly stressful environment to be operating in constantly, right? You are
Yeah.
talking about significant amounts of money, significantly long time durations and processes, a ton of different players in the court all at once, and having to keep everyone on the same page and be excited about it. I think something I've learned is like, you shouldn't pitch that they're going to be excited about it the whole time. Like, be very, very open and transparent about. I've heard people even say like they present a little roadmap. It's like, here's where you're going to get really mad at me, and then here's what the next week's going to look like when you're going to look really happy with me, and then this is where we'll get to the finish line here. But I think that's what we brought you on to talk about today is how to navigate those circumstances and set the proper expectations to make it a better experience for everyone involved, not just the
Yeah.
builder, not just the client, but the entire team.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I think also there is a misconception that uh, clients feel like once they've hired their team, that team is responsible for the dynamic of their project.
Hmm.
And that nothing could be further from the truth. It actually, the clients are the ones who establish the dynamic. If they're hostile, the project is hostile. Like there's nothing that's going to save a project from a hostile client. If they don't know what's going on, nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
If they're not dialed in, then we can't be dialed in. And I think it's a big shift in people's thinking on how these projects have to be successful. Everyone has to be on the same page all the time. That's what makes it so hard.
Yeah. So
It's like the most stressful marriage ever, where it's like you constantly have to be talking about all the hard things all the time. You can't, it's like you can't walk away from it because things are moving so quickly also,
right.
like people don't even have time to think on something. Once construction starts, you're high octane, full force ahead. Otherwise, you're behind. Like if you're not 4 steps ahead in construction, you're 2 steps behind. That's just how it is.
That's a fantastic way to think about things. So I'm curious, you mentioned you'd been in business what, 18 years now? Is that what you said?
13.
13 years now. What were some of the like how did you grow to come into this mentality? Were there a couple like difficult projects early on once you got through the business partner and the litigation phase where you learned lessons the hard way, or was it something you kind of had intent from the beginning since you had gone through a poor contractor as yourself as a client? What were kind of some of the key turning points that got you to where you're at today from a way of thinking?
I think it's a combination of failures and successes, right? Like, and I think when we have a really successful project, it just exacerbates the failures on others, right? Where you're like, wow, we did that so much better on this one. I think the projects are difficult, the clients are difficult. There's a lot of personalities there. There's a lot of different project management styles
Hmm.
when it comes from clients, and I think the team is really, really important. Like I took for granted early on that I could work with any architect. I can't work with any architect. I have to work with the right architect because the reason that builders and architects end up as adversaries is when they have two completely different working styles. I have a high level of due diligence, a high level of detail. I need architects checking our stuff. I require contractually that they're checking our stuff. And if we have an architect that's unsure or feels exposed because of the level of detail that we require of them, it's very difficult, right, on that project, and it creates a dynamic where the clients end up refereeing between us, and that's a situation we never want. Like, I never want a
Absolutely.
client as a referee on a project. I can't. There's nothing worse. And I also think sometimes clients are just better off like not renovating. Like, there are times where I was like, I think you're better off buying something that's already built. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I don't think and there's so many dynamics that are happening on the projects as well. Like, the very first lien we ever had to file was because the clients got divorced in the middle of the
Mm,
project and just started arguing over who was supposed to pay me, like through
right.
no fault of my own. And that's where I realized I was like, wow, this business is tough. Like, I have no control over that. And I think like how it evolved over the years is like the failures, yes, like they're hard, but I would say it's more like every project. There's always those hard parts of those projects, and I think we're just you always try and zone into it. I just sort of got obsessive about like,
Yeah.
why are they doing that? Because sometimes it feels like clients are self-sabotaging themselves. Like, why would you do that? Why are you acting like that? Like, what do you think? But I'm coming from it from a very business,
Right.
non-emotional, cognitive, critical thinking way. And clients are coming from it from a very emotional, self-focused,
Yeah.
expecting way, right? And so I think over the years, what I learned, just as a matter of survival and just trying to understand, like, how do we make this better? A big part of making it better was understanding why these things were happening on projects, because it all felt like it was completely illogical until it wasn't, and it
Right.
was like, oh, yeah, my bad. Like, I'm being way too nice to you. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why you're acting like this because you're confused. I think fundamentally the most important thing I learned is that the very best thing I can be for my clients is their contractor
Yeah.
and nothing else.
That's actually a really good way of thinking about it, and not one that I'd really thought of before. Of like, of course, the GC is going to be coming at it from a business standpoint, and of course, the client is going to be coming at it from a very emotional standpoint. Like, that's kind of the roles they're trying to play and should be playing, but not understanding and accounting for what the other role is just going to be kind of constant headbutting throughout the entire thing. So what I
Yeah.
want to get into a little bit is I'd like to separate this out a little bit between like kind of the pre-construction phase and the expectation setting, because I love how you have this listed out in your kind of process page, and then kind of during the construction phase, the change management, the client expectations, things like that. So let's start at the top of the funnel. What is your kind of key like things that you make sure you hit on in your process every single time when you're just starting a conversation with the client? Like, I saw even on your website here, like, you list out your typical prices per square foot. So you're already starting to set expectation the first time someone lands on your page. What are some of those kind of next steps that you make sure you always hit on?
Yeah, I mean, budget is king, right? Like, they need to understand how much this stuff costs, and it's exorbitantly expensive. Like,
Mm-hmm.
every time I do a bid, it shocks me. I can imagine how they feel. And so I think the budget expectation is really it's always the core focus of any project, whether it's a $500,000 project, whether it's a $5 million project. And I think really managing the expectations of what that means, what it includes. Schedule is also something that's, we get a lot of people that are like, it's December and they're like, we would really like to be in before the holidays next year. It's like, no, an average project takes a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and really explaining step by step. The bids and schedules work the same way. They're a bunch of reasonable line items that add up to a big line item, right? And so it's like on the bids, it's like, yeah, there's all these reasonable numbers for all the trades that add up to this multi-million-dollar budget.
Right.
And the schedule is a bunch of reasonable allocations of weeks for each trade, right? That all add up to suddenly, year over a year. And I do find that the pre-construction process is there for us to reiterate and reiterate and reiterate because clients have a superpower, which is optimism in the face of anything, right? And let's just like they want to believe. The hardest part is when they have decided on something in their mind based on nothing.
Right.
Right. Like I had a client once that was like, our budget was, I came in and I think I was at like 2.4 or something. They were like, our budget was like 800,000. And I was like, when you bought this lot, did you look at other houses? Like, why did you buy this lot? And they were like, well, we looked at other houses. We didn't like them. I said, okay. And those houses were 800,000. And they were like, yeah. And I said, okay, did they look like this? You
Right.
know? And they're like, no. I'm like, no, this is like 2,000 square feet bigger. It's
Right.
super architectural. It's super contemporary. When you buy a house, you don't have your design fees. Those are 20% right there of whatever you're doing. And I think with clients, like you really have to back it up for them like that. And it's a fine line. You don't want to be condescending and you don't want to be aggressive, right? But you have to be abundantly clear.
Yeah.
And I would say that's the hard skill set
For
for
sure.
builders of like, and pre-construction is there for the team to work together, and really like establish that relationship and dynamic before we're doing anything serious.
Well,
You know,
that's a perfect example. And sorry to cut you off, but what you said earlier, where like your job is to be a contractor, not a friend. I'm sure a lot of other people would have been like, "Oh, we could probably cut some costs down and get you something really nice for 800,000 that you'll love." And then you're going to finish the project, and they're going to hate it, and they're going to hate you, and everything's going to go poorly from there. The tough love up front saves a ton of time and attention downstream.
Yeah, and the thing is no one's happy with a favor at the end of the day. Like it never feels worth it because if you're a builder and you're cutting costs in the beginning, when you've been working on that project for even 6 months, that discount didn't feel worth it because you're hurting on money. The margins are tight. We're not making 200%, 100% on the job. Like we're fighting. We're fighting to net 10. And that is a low number. And it's really, and it's, by the way, really, really hard to maintain that. And that's at any markup. And so, you know, with clients too, like you just don't want them playing the lottery. It's like we really want the builder being paid what the project is worth to them. And because the clients, it's like you need the builder on your side, and also just from a leverage standpoint, if the builder feels like they're getting paid and they're not doing you any favors, they're going to come to the table more readily when you have issues. But if your builder feels like they're doing you favors, well, they feel like you owe them a favor.
Right.
But no one's actually talking about it ever. It's just these feelings that everyone has privately that come to a head 8 months later in some weird way over a toilet flusher.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
The final straw. Yeah.
yeah. Because it's always over a toilet, but it's never about the toilet. Right?
That's so awesome. Yeah. Unless you have like a marriage counselor on your team that's like doing these different discoveries between you and the client. You got to be upfront about it and get it out of the way early. It's always
Yeah.
over a toilet.
Yeah. And it's always just reminding them, like, pre-construction is there also is just a subtle reminder that it's like, yes, this is your personal home. Yes, this is your personal money, but it's still a business transaction.
Yeah. And so you communicate over and over, continue to reiterate the point. When it comes to kind of the next step and, signing a contract, is that something you really put a ton of time and attention into as well, too, to make sure the things you've been verbalizing is contractually in there as well?
Yeah, I actually set a meeting to go over the contract with clients, because sometimes I would have clients that would like sign that contract like it was on fire, and they're just like so excited to move forward. And then later when we're enforcing the contract, they feel betrayed or they feel like we were trying to pull one over on them or something. We have a lot of language in our contract that might be atypical from an AIA contract. I mean, our contract is largely based on an AIA contract. We do AIA contracts, but we have a rider to them. And the point of our contract, and really the point of the review, is to show the clients, number one, we're serious. And we're serious about ourselves. We're serious about you. We're serious about the project. We're serious, the contract is here to establish the rules of play. This is an endurance sport. We need rules. And there are things that I can and cannot do. I have an immense amount of liability on your project, an immense amount of liability. And therefore, you must conduct yourself in this way and in this manner throughout the course of the project, meaning like, don't talk to my subs. You talk to my subs, I'm going to charge you $1,000 every time you do it. Why am I doing that? Doing it so you don't get yourself in trouble by telling the sub to do something that ends up being a big problem later. You know, and I always tell the clients, like, I put this language in here not to trap you, not to punish you. I put it in here because we are solely focused on execution. I am liable for the budget. I am liable for the schedule, but I can only do those within an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And if you mess with the ecosystem, I can't perform, and you may not understand what you're doing when you're doing it. And so it feels very innocent to you, but it still costs me time and money.
Yeah.
You know? And so the contract is a really, really important part of that initial process, but it's also something that I use often throughout the whole project, because I never want clients to feel like when you're referencing the contract, you're having an argument. Like, that contract should be a living, breathing document that we're talking about and referencing. So even when I issue a change order, I'm like, per our agreement, per our agreement, you know, just as a reminder, that's like, we have an agreement here. There are terms we've agreed to, because where projects go south is when clients want to operate on their own terms and not on the terms of the agreement.
Yeah.
You know?
And if it's not in there, you can say it a million times. I think you maybe referenced this earlier too, but once someone has an idea in their mind, they kind of see the things that confirm that idea and kind of brush out a lot of the other things. So unless you put it in writing, read it to them, tell them that there's going to be a fee associated for breaking that, and make them sign it, they don't really, and I wouldn't either, no one would, understand the magnitude of like, no, this isn't a nice to have, this isn't a request, this is a way that it's a must have for us to be successful and for you to ultimately get your dream home or your dream project that you want. It's beneficial on both sides.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and the thing is that, like, clients don't understand. They're not contractors, they're not builders. They don't know what they're doing when they're coming on site. And my subcontractors have the same agreement, by the way. Like, they're not allowed to talk to the clients, you know? And it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, we are the middleman. Like, the GC and builder is there to protect the clients from the subs and to protect the subs from the clients. That's our job, you know, and it's to make sure that we keep on the straight line from beginning to end. And, you know, the project fights you no matter what. Like, the project is always going to throw curveballs at you. So my philosophy is anything that we can be in control of, we should be in control of. There's no reason for things to be unnecessarily crazy on a project, you know? So
the outlining the do not talk to subs policy was interesting. Do you call out any other, and this will be a nice kind of natural segue to the construction phase anyways, any other kind of specific communication type verbiage in the agreement of like, this is how often we're going to meet, this is what we're going to talk about, this is like maybe the hours that we can text, or do you call out kind of what the communication will be like moving forward in that agreement as well?
yeah, we do a kickoff email at the beginning where we set ground rules for communication. I really encourage all of my team, my staff, to unsync their phones from email nights and weekends. You know, there's nothing after 6 p.m. and before 6 a.m. that we can fix. You know, so there's no reason for us to even know about it. All you're going to do is ruin your night's sleep. So I tell the clients, like, you can email us at any time, but know that you have everyone's personal cell phones. So please don't text, you know, after 6 or before 6 a.m. Other than that, like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., like, that's a long time every day for you to be able to get a hold of us. If you have an emergency, you can reach out to me as CEO or the superintendent, executive charge of construction. And by the way, an emergency is fire or water, and you should be calling 911 first.
Yeah.
Before you call us.
This is what an emergency is. Let's start
This is what an emergency is, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and the clients, I will say, like, they respect that. I would say the hardest part is actually from the employee side, where they might be working late, and I'm like, don't break that precedent. Like,
Yeah.
don't confuse anybody. Like, don't just, it's good for everybody, and because a lot of times, clients on the weekends is when they're thinking about things, responding to things. Um, so I think that's a reasonable approach. And then, throughout the project, it really depends on the project. I do stipulate how many, we call them OAC, owner, architect, contractor meetings we have.
Okay.
And it just depends. It depends on the project. But I'll allocate a number of how many OAC meetings are included in this price, how many design coordination hours are included in this price. We are very anti-change order. We
Okay.
don't like change orders. And so our contract is very much focused on pre-construction and doing a lot of due diligence and really avoiding unnecessary changes throughout the project. So we have a lot of, like, when I say design criteria, it's like, don't cut corners on design, because if you got some interior designer who's like sending you a bunch of Pinterest photos and not actual specifications, I'm going to charge you if I'm running around with that person
Yeah.
explaining that that's not a white oak floor, that's a pre-finished maple floor
Yeah.
on some other builder's Pinterest photo.
That's such an awesome example, because you can think perfectly like a million examples of people that have done exactly that. Like, oh, this is what I'm trying to do. It's like, well, that's what you're saying and what you're showing me are two totally different things. So
Yeah.
let's start there. Do you guys charge for your change orders, or do you not do them at all?
Yes. I charge $500 a change order because we bill at $250 an hour for pre-construction, and there's no change order that takes me less than 2 hours to put together.
Right.
If it's an unforeseen condition, we won't, but if it's a voluntary change order, we're going to charge for that time regardless of whether or not you approve it. And again, that's just there where it's like, guys, we're trying to maintain your budget. We're trying to maintain your schedule. Don't distract us from what's most important.
Yeah.
And establish this in pre-construction. Pre-construction, you can make those changes, no problem. No problem. But once we've hit construction, stay out of our way.
Yeah.
Let us go.
Absolutely. And I
watch the process, enjoy, be free.
Yeah, be free, enjoy. It's crazy to me that some people don't charge for change orders. I don't have the stat on me, but I was just looking through the Association of Professional Builders, their Sourcey report that they put out every year, and they have a ton of good stuff in there about how much money it can cost you from your in margin through change orders, but also just how much time that you don't even think about, and those add up over time. So just continuing to put more and more attention and detail to the beginning and outlining, this is why we're doing this, otherwise we're going to have to charge you, and it's going to slow stuff down. You're not going to be in for the holidays that you originally wanted to do. Continues to really reinforce that. As far as visibility, and it's okay if you don't, but do you use the client portal in Buildertrend?
Yeah. The client portal is great. Like client facing. First of all, it makes you look like really professional.
Right.
And it just gives the client something that they can log into, even just to see like what their balance is. Like, this is what your project is costing. This is how much you have left over. To just not have to issue that kind of information and have it readily available for them it was a game changer for us. I think we started with Buildertrend in like 2017, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely upped our game.
For sure. Well, I'm sure you've enjoyed some of the recent updates to the client portal as well. Because that was kind of a weird one for us here at Buildertrend. It's like we're building our product for GCs. So for a long time, it's like, well, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time working on the homeowner portal or the client portal because, that's not who's paying us. And it's like, that's such a good tool for our GCs to make them more successful, either being able to cut down on the amount of communication that they have to go through because someone can just log in and look at it instead. But also the point you just said is like from a professional, appearance standpoint, it's like, oh, here's this app that you can log into, you can check in. So over the past year or two, we've spent a ton of time trying to make that better for the GC's clients, because that's ultimately going to make our clients better, which is the GC. So it's cool to hear that you're taking advantage of that and it's been beneficial for you.
Yeah, I think on the sales side of things, builders are always struggling with being commoditized. It's like we're always fighting that low bidder. It's like we're trying to give the right price, and there's someone that's just trying to get the job. I hope that starts going away. I haven't seen it as much, but I'm still seeing it. But I think when it comes to the process, it's a game of inches. And, you know, having a professional software where, you know, it's like it subtly gives an indication of what's differentiating the builders without me having to actually say it, where it's like,
Right.
okay, you got Joe Schmo over here that's somehow 20% less. I don't know how or why. And, you know, but how did he deliver that bid?
Hmm.
What's in that bid? You know, it's like, okay, if I'm sending you over like a link to Buildertrend and you have a portal you're looking into and you see this detailed process and you understand, you know, in pre-construction, you're getting itemized invoices that you can ACH pay. That's a different experience, not only for the clients, but also for the architects. Like it also frames for the architects who they're working with because they have to adjust too, I'm sure, project to project.
Right. Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it. It's a lot of the intangibles that you have to lean on and promote and account for if you want to stay profitable and if you want to work with the clients that you want to work with. It's always funny when I hear about, you know, people getting underbid by 20% or something like that. Like I would love to follow up with them if they went with that bid a year from now and be like, so how was that experience? Would the extra 20%
Yeah, I actually
have
had
been
an
worth it?
architect who kept track. Like she
Oh,
kept
really?
track of the bids that I was losing, and then she started a spreadsheet.
That's awesome.
And you know, because she was like more up and coming, she wasn't as established, and so she, you know, like her client base like really fluctuated, and so she started this spreadsheet to see like where my bid was and like where they ended up. And the thing is like if you even if you end up at the same price at the end of the day, it's a lesser product.
Hmm.
Because if you're making changes during construction, you are compromised
Hmm.
because you don't have the luxury of time, you don't have the luxury of resources, you don't, and so therefore you don't have the thought process to really be making good decisions or prudent decisions. Like in some way, the project suffers. Like you'll always get more for less in
Yeah.
pre-con
Well,
than you
even
will adding those changes during construction.
100%. And even like zoom out from just like dollars and cents and bricks and sticks is like, how much is your mental sanity worth? Like, how much is like just knowing exactly where the project's going to be at, exactly how it's going to go, when to communicate, knowing everything. You don't need to make changes because you're building $1 million house. I'm sure adding another $20,000 in there somewhere isn't great for your stress levels. Those are things that aren't listed out in the line item that you put together, but they're things that matter. There's things that people should pay for because of the better experience.
Yeah, and also like the change order feature too, and I really like that was a game changer. You know, we used to do change orders. It was like a spreadsheet template that was formatted. I'd have to put it in my bid sheet, right, and like calculate it. Then I'd have to transfer it to a spreadsheet. Then we'd PDF it and send the change order to the client. Then we have to put that PDF in DocuSign and get it signed. And then we're all keeping the PDF maybe, right? And so, and the thing is like the nice thing about having a portal like that is like clients can just go into the change orders and see, you know, like what was approved. They can see where their budget started and where it ended, you know, because a lot of times, like when projects, I guarantee any builder will agree with me. When you have a project that's gone south, there's been a ton of change orders. Like you projects that don't have a lot of change orders don't go south. You know, we had one project just last year, 81 change orders, and I was like, we're never going to see the end of this project. Boom, we didn't. You know, like
Yeah.
there's no way. However, for better or for worse, like Buildertrend at least helped because what I try and do in those situations is say, you voluntarily increased your budget X%,
Yeah.
like to frame it for them, you know. And in that particular case, I was like, you have voluntarily increased your project 53%.
Yeah. Just having that
So
level of visibility.
yeah, you know, it's like these are not unforeseen conditions. These are just like changes. This is like you redesigning the project as we're going. Like, you know, we talked about this, but for them to be able to put it in like dollars and cents in black and white, to be already having those conversations, but not also having the confusion of the documentation. It's like I can just quickly pull up a spreadsheet. They can do the same thing. They can export the same spreadsheet. At least we're all talking about the same thing, you know? And it is critical, especially when you're having hard conversations and you're having them about money.
Oh, absolutely. In another life, you would have made a fantastic Buildertrend salesperson. So if you ever want to look for a change of pace and come out to Omaha, Nebraska, I could probably find a role for you.
Maybe.
We are way over time here. I wanted to at least hit on this towards the end, though. You also do speaking engagements. I saw on your website there's a little contact info there. So people listening and wanting to hear more or hear their people hear more, could you tell us a little bit about that and maybe the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go right to my website, www.integrobuilders.com. And there's a tab for speaking engagements. Go ahead, fill out the form. I'm happy to give you a list of what I talk about. It's primarily executive focused, client management focused, and business focused. So for example, I'll do like 50 Shades of Cray, how to manage crazy clients,
awesome.
Which is really about project management. And, I have a hope for the best, plan for the worst, which is about how to protect your business from the hard years, and fail safes you should be putting in place, for when it's slow.
Awesome.
Or you end up in litigation.
Yeah. Not great places to be, but good times to learn about them.
Yeah.
Well, Allyson, thank you so much for joining us. This was incredible. I learned a ton. My favorite thing about doing this is everything that you say and all of our guests say is like also directly applicable to me in my role outside of being the podcast host here at Buildertrend. I feel like I'm getting a free college education, like just doing this interview. So appreciate it very much. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
All right. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate being here.
We'll talk soon. Bye. Well, we just heard from Allyson Case Anderson, founder and CEO of Integro Builders, talking about client management. I am always so grateful that I get to do this job and talk to people like Allyson, because it's kind of like a free education for me. I reference this a lot, but hosting the Building Code is not the only thing I do here at Buildertrend. And I am constantly, doing a ton of project management, talking to a ton of quote unquote clients, which would be, our internal employees here at Buildertrend, setting the proper expectations of when projects are going to get delivered and get across the finish line, making sure that what they want is actually what they want and when they need it is actually when they need it. So I learned a ton just from doing this podcast. I take notes as always, and I'm always blown away by how similar our industries are. Some things that she said in there that really stood out to me was kind of having those hard truths early on in the process, outlining why this is going to be difficult, and don't kind of paint this really, pretty rainbow at the beginning that everything's going to be smooth. Like it's hard. And obviously, building a home is a much longer duration, higher dollar spend than a lot of things I do. But you're going to have to talk about it at some point, right? So you either talk about it at the beginning and make sure you're all on the same page before you start this journey together, or you talk about it when it becomes a problem. She used the example, I guess, always the toilet, right? The boiling point, the final straw that broke the camel's back. So having those hard conversations, being the contractor, not the friend, is just going to set you up for success down the road. And I think that's a mindset that more and more people in the industry are starting to embrace, and it's really paying dividends downstream from there. I have a couple stats in here that we didn't get a reference during the interview. Is 48% of the rework in U.S. construction projects comes from miscommunication, leading to significant costs and delays. We have another one, $31.3 billion annually is the estimated cost of rework in the construction industry attributed to poor data and miscommunication. So just take the time, take the attention, take the extra work, making sure that you're all on the same page. I love what she did with the contracts as well too. Really, really outlining everything that you or she as the GC needs the client to follow and understand, walking them through that, understand that there are financial repercussions to breaking that, to really drive that point home, and just setting everyone up for success. So I really enjoyed the interview. Allyson, if you're listening to this, thank you very much for teaching me today, and hopefully our listeners found it valuable as well too. As always, if you want more, check us out on Facebook at the Building Code Crew. Like, review, subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts. Leave a comment. Do whatever you got to do. But if not, I will see you here next time at the Building Code. I'm Charley Birtwhistle. Peace.